Welcome to Athlon U. My name is Braden Gall. You can follow me on the internet. College football season. Am I allowed to say that it's here, Stephen Lapson?
Braden, you can definitely do that because we are under 30 days until kickoff. August starts this week. Players are out of practice. We've got coaches and administrators yelling about schedules and complaining. So that must mean the season is almost here, right?
Yeah, something like that. Something like that. We're going to preview the Big Ten today. We'll look at the entire conference. We'll try to work our way through each and every team the way we did with the Big 12 last week. We did that episode just a couple of days early because I was on vacation all over. Is Northern Kentucky, Southeastern Ohio, and West Virginia? Which conference is that now? Which is that? A little bit of SEC, a little bit of Big 12, a little bit of Big 10, a little bit of ACC. I don't know. I was out of town for like 8 days, wandering through the woods and whitewater rafting and celebrating my wife's 40th birthday. It was great. I had a great time. The kids are in great shape, and I got back. And today, Tuesday, July 29th, I covered the Titans here locally, and they have football pads on. There are people doing football activities on a field with pads that I got to watch today. And I got back from vacation last night, and I'm super excited because I feel like football season has sort of snuck up on me, which is very, very rare for me personally. So I'm excited about the fall being here. I just wish it wasn't 112 degrees in Nashville.
Yeah, you and me both. You cannot walk to the mailbox without needing a shower after. It's miserable. When you were out exploring the great outdoors in Big 12, ACC, SEC country, did you think about the world of college football in 2025 and any thoughts come to mind?
So this thing that I do with my wife and kids when we go on our summer road trips, and I've done this now for Troy. I've done this now for the University of Missouri. I did it. We stayed in Lexington on our drive up to the New River Gorge National Park. I did some family stuff up a little bit higher and close to Morgantown, actually. Beautiful. It reminds me of the Smokies on steroids. The Allegheny and the whole West Virginia. It's gorgeous. It's beautiful. Had a great time. Very fulfilled. Spiritually, I'm refreshed. But I made them stop at the we went and looked at the Kentucky football stadium. I made the kids take a picture in front of it. This is obviously for no reason at all.
You didn't post it on social media, so I didn't know.
I have no time. In fact, my two daughters 2 summers ago, this is true. My two daughters were in the Missouri indoor practice facility before any of the local media got a chance to see it because we were just there and I just popped by. I texted one of my buddies for the Post Dispatch and I was like, hey, have you guys been in here yet? He was like, we haven't seen it. And it's a picture of my kids. We could not get into to Kentucky's football stadium, but we did get into the Marshall Thundering Herd football stadium. And we were I've got a picture of them standing near the end zone and everything. And Huntington is a fascinating town. Very tight knit. We hit a brewery there on during our took a little pit stop and kind of took a look at the town. Those towns are hard to get to in West Virginia. Mm-hmm. Took a look at the monument. We went and saw the We Are Marshall monument, of course, and fascinating. Like it, blue collar town. Understand why they love their university. The river right there is pretty cool. But man, that's a gritty. I'm gonna call it a gritty town, Stephen. I'm gonna call that a gritty town. But it was a great trip. Yeah. It was gorgeous. And then when I got back, I was like, did anything happen? What happened while I was gone? It feels like a lot of things have happened while I was gone.
Oh, you missed a lot, Braden. First of all, we had, like I mentioned, coaches and administrators running their mouth, complaining about strength of schedule, the college football playoff, media days. There was all that. But we did have some actual news. How about a quarterback change in the American Athletic Conference? We got Jake Retzlaff transferring to Tulane. So that is Tulane's 4th transfer quarterback this year. They added Caden Samanza from Ball State, Brendan Sullivan, old Big Ten friend from Iowa. He's also there. Donovan Leary from Illinois. I think this is a pretty good pickup for Tulane. Obviously, quarterback's a question because they lost Daria Mensah to Duke. Retzlaff, he's going to have a quick learning curve, but I think he could end up being a pretty nice starter for Tulane, a team that we've got picked to win the American.
Yeah, so they're number 1 in the American. Blake Horvath is your first team all AAC out of Navy. I imagine Retzlaff could easily be the number 1 quarterback in this conference. He goes to the number 1 team. So what I think this does, Stephen, is it puts Tulane closer to Boise, not even, it doesn't necessarily change anything about the AAC projections as they were already number one, but it definitely puts them, in my opinion, it puts them into the conversation with Boise for top G5 team. They were already there, but now the gap I think is closed significantly if Retzlaff can get up to speed quickly.
I think so too. I think the question is going to be like, how fast is he able to acclimate there? Just because he's not going to have an off season. Essentially, he's going to have to get there fall practice and have to get going. They play Northwestern in the season opener at South Alabama. The game against Duke is fascinating because of the quarterback, and they play at Ole Miss. I mean, I think they could beat Northwestern and Duke. I think beating Ole Miss on the road is going to be hard, but I think once you get into AAC play, there is a good chance they are favored in all those games. So to your point, if they can pick off one of those games, two of those games, I think they're potentially closer to Boise if Retzlaff hits at quarterback.
And remember, Boise unlikely to be unbeaten because of their Notre Dame trip. And so if you've got one loss at Notre Dame for Boise and one loss at Ole Miss for Tulane, those sort of wash each other out. Neither is an advantage or a disadvantage. And then it's about, can you win all the other games on your schedule? So I just think it was a one-horse race. When we sort of did our G5 preview a few weeks ago, I think we're closer to a 2-horse race, maybe. And there's some other teams that are involved in this conversation, right? There's a few others that are, James Madison and Memphis and a few others. But like I think it's Boise and Tulane now for the playoff spot. What else? Anything else happen? While I was rafting down the second oldest river in the world. Did you know that? Second oldest river in the world. It's awesome.
I'm a little familiar with West Virginia geography. My family's got some ties up there, so I'm glad you had a good time up there. I guess is that Stephen Lassen territory? I guess to some extent.
I don't. Have you ever lived there? Is your family from Is your family from there?
My parents are from West Virginia.
Oh, okay, that counts.
Yeah. I got a lot of family that lives in Pennsylvania, Ohio, West Virginia. Okay. So we're
okay. That's Lasso territory. That's fine.
You didn't happen to see anybody perhaps outside late hours out of a casino named Dana Holgerson, did you? You did happen to see.
We just listened to Tyler Childers the entire time because, it's Eastern Kentucky coal mine territory, West Virginia hills. That's just Tyler Childers has a new record out last week. It was just Tyler Childers the entire time. So just a lot of country crooning on those interstate roads. All right, what else? Deion Sanders is back and doing all right, right?
Yeah, great news for Colorado. It's good to see Deion back. Yeah. There's a lot of rumors floating around about his health the last couple weeks. He didn't talk much about it at Big 12 Media Days, but he came out on Monday and said he had bladder cancer, pretty serious. He actually had to have it removed. Sounds like all systems go for this season, though. So a lot of uncertainty, but looks like we do have some certainty. And good to see Deion back because I enjoy the Colorado experience with Deion, and not to mention just the wild card nature of the Big 12. Getting Deion back this season is great to see.
All right, so we're going to run through the Big 10, and we're going to talk Big 10 football teams. We'll give you our preview and our predictions and our rankings and sort of the fun things we're looking forward to, some teams that we expect to maybe overachieve, etc., like we did with the Big 12. We'll do this for all the major conferences. That being said, we got to get to the drama because there's Big 10 Media Day drama. There's also Big 12 drama, which for the third time now, and I think the last 12 years, Memphis has been denied access to the Big 12. And this time they tried to give the Big 12 $200 million for it.
They did. So I actually think this is kind of instructive and not necessarily isolated to Memphis, because think about what SMU had to do to get into the ACC. They wouldn't take TV revenue for, a period of time. All the big boosters were willing to fund SMU football for what they need to do. Cal and Stanford took a discount too on a TV deal. I think that's like the price of doing business now. Like if you're Memphis or Boise, UNLV, if you want to move up, there's not a lot of spots. Like, what do you bring? Memphis offered, I think it was reportedly around $200 million to get into the Big 12. It was also a kind of a proposal where, at the end of 2030, 31, the Big 12 could actually just kick them out if they didn't add any value to it. So Memphis has big time aspirations. They've got good money. They got good sponsorships. I think we've talked before, they could perhaps be on the waiting list for the ACC if things fall apart in the future. I'm actually a little surprised they didn't go to Jim Phillips right after and offer the same deal. But I think at this point, Memphis is kind of just either stuck in the American or going to the Pac-12 and splitting basketball with the Big East. That seems like their only options right now.
I feel like playing, I know they're anxious. They're getting real thirsty, but I think they need to I don't think jumping just to jump for the sake of the jump. And I know the athletic director has like a big bonus that kicks in if he gets his team into another conference. Like I could see if you're going to go to the ACC, I think that makes sense. But you need to make sure you've got an out like in 2030, 2031, right? Like you've got to make sure you've got an out because I don't think long term, I think the Big 12 fits better. Personally, it just makes more sense, especially when you kind of reunite them with some of their former foes. I just think I think being patient is the right move for Memphis, and it doesn't feel like splitting it to make it work with the Pac-12 just doesn't. That feels like a temporary solution.
It does.
They're still going to want to make another move after that. So why do it right now? Just dominate, like invest in revenue sharing as one of the only teams probably in the AAC that will be able to do that and dominate the AAC and give yourself a chance at the playoff every single year by being the best team in the AAC. That to me, that's the path for the short term for Memphis, in my opinion.
I would agree with you because I do think there is a danger of like, let's just say you hop now to the Pac-12. What happens in 2030? Like you're paying all these buyout fees. You're trying to go through all this. Why not just essentially get your house in order, get stuff like this in line, and then see what happens in 2030? And then maybe if the chessboard moves a little bit or moves a lot, Memphis is ready for that. They've got all this money behind them. That's not going anywhere. So I think positioning yourself for that next wave is probably the best plan of attack right now for Memphis.
So we'll see what happens. If you are watching on YouTube, please subscribe, thumbs up, share the show, tell somebody to come subscribe to the Athlon U podcast YouTube page. You can watch the show. You can see all of Lasso's helmets in the background there. You never know what football stadium I'll show you a picture of with my kids standing at. But
see, I changed the helmets this time to put more Big Ten helmets. See, you're slipping. You were out in the heat too long.
I'm not slipping. I see USC, Nebraska, and Washington, just traditional Big Ten powerhouses.
Right.
So no, okay. So here's the deal. I was out at Titans practice with reporter for The Athletic and Big Ten graduate Joe Rexroad, good friend of mine, great writer, fantastic reporter, like one of the best. And I think covered the Michigan State beat for a really long time, I think. But he's a Michigan State grad. So a Big Ten grad who is more livid at the Big Ten's behavior for media days than anyone I have talked to be honest. I love, and I think it is healthy to some degree, that the Big Ten and the SEC has a general rivalry. Whether that's fans doing the North-South thing, whether that's commissioners, whether that's the dollars and cents of it, whether it's actual games in the playoff, the Big Ten with the bragging rights right now over the last 2 years. Like I think it is good for the sport for there to be a healthy and sort of productive rivalry between the two. I do not think what the Big Ten is currently doing. Now, I think they're playing a game here, as I have said on the show all along. I think they think that 9 conference games in the Big Ten is somehow, I think to quote James Franklin, not apples to apples, which I find to be utterly short-sighted and hilarious. Because I don't think that the SEC's 8 games is the same as the Big Ten's 9 games. And according to I was reading Stuart Mandel, he said there by no metric is the SEC playing easier schedules than the Big Ten. Fact check, true. It's just it's not anything new, Lasso, other than it was so organized from a messaging standpoint, and what felt like from Petiti, because he's not a college football lifer, a little bit tone deaf that people in college football want an 8-4 Iowa team to somehow make the playoff. And unfortunately, it sounds like we're picking on Iowa. I'm not. I could say 8-4 Arkansas. I could say 8-4 Oklahoma State. I could say 8-4 NC State. 8-4, especially when you lose to UCLA. And a few others you shouldn't lose to. What, they lose to Michigan State last year too? Iowa did. Iowa's maybe a bad example. Iowa's maybe a bad example, but like you get the point. He's like, well, 6-3 is a great record, and if they lose in the non-conference, that shouldn't disqualify you. People want 8-4 teams, and like no one wants an 8-4 team from any conference, regardless of how strong your schedule is, to get into the playoff. And no one wants a conference or any conference, SEC or Big Ten, to be given automatic bids over other leagues automatically just because they have the most money. Now, I hadn't thought of it. I should have thought of this. I just assumed this was politics and negotiating, that the Big Ten wants the SEC. They want to force the SEC's hand to go to 9 games. And the SEC is like, fine, we'll give you that, but you got to back off this automatic qualifier garbage. in a little tit for tat political leverage game that they're playing. And I think that's ultimately what they're trying to do here, from what I understand. But I had not thought about how desperate Fox, because Big Ten fan is very quick. Oh, ESCCPN bias, SEC, ESPN is running this college, this sport. Fox desperately wants more playoff inventory, and they don't have any of it. They don't have bowl games. They don't have playoff games. They got nothing, and they are desperate, and they own the majority of the Big Ten network and the media rights for the conference. So it's different. The SEC does not own, or excuse me, ESPN doesn't own a penny of the SEC. Fox owns some of the Big Ten, which I always forget about because, and I shouldn't. And it makes perfect sense. They want more games, more inventory, more resources. So does ESPN, so does CBS, so does NBC. But that's the one thing that sort of gives me pause on this and says, man, maybe they are going to hold down the fort and try to ruin the sport by giving 4 automatic qualifiers to the SEC and the Big Ten, which I don't want for anyone. 2 to the ACC and Big 12 seems so stupid for any number of reasons. So I don't know if you changed your opinion, but the messaging strategy that was so consistent, all 16 out of 18 coaches praising the leadership and the direction, and this is what we should do, and Petiti, it was kind of sad. It was kind of sad, but also I like the rivalry, so I'm okay with that too. So
yeah, there's a lot to unpack with the whole thing that went down with Big Ten Media Days. I think it was instructive that there were people, and I was following along, that people basically saying, if Petiti wants this to go through, he's not doing a very good job of trying to convince people that this actually works.
He's doing the opposite.
Yeah, it's like, so if your proposal is to do automatic qualifiers, that basically just makes the non-conference schedules like, and then you have Big Ten coaches saying, well, I don't know if we can schedule Texas because we got, we're going to have this playoff thing. And then USC's not sure if they can play Notre Dame. I mean, it was mind-boggling to just see some of the quotes coming out of Big Ten Media Days. And I get it, like conference media days, there's a kind of rah-rah, get ready for the season.
No question.
Every coach and every conference does it. But picking on the Big Ten, because I think it's telling that, as you said, not all schedules are created equal. Just because you play 9 conference games doesn't mean you're better than 8 conference games. Some 8-game schedules are clearly weaker than some of the 9-game schedules. Also, it is interesting to me that everybody continues to beat up on the playoff committee when I think for the most part, they have done a good job. Now, I'm not necessarily the biggest fan of the committee and some of the things around it, but they've done a pretty good job. So it's very telling that the Big Ten is just isolated on this issue. They are the only conference who wants it.
Yeah.
The ACC and Big 12 would actually benefit from having 2 teams guaranteed every year. And they are like, no, we want no part of this. We want the at-large bids, and the Big Ten is the only conference pushing. They are clearly on an island on this one. And I think it's getting to the point where it is just a stalemate, to where I would not be surprised if there is 0 expansion, at least for 2026. And this just continues indefinitely until there's some give here on somebody's side.
It does not help, of course, that I believe, was it right before Media Days, Indiana cancels a home and home with Virginia of all schools. Like, that's the school you're scared of, is in Virginia. Like, Indiana with Kirk Cignetti and Mendoza at quarterback would cook Virginia. They would destroy Virginia. Like, why are you canceling that series of all of them? You want to cancel like a home and home with like Alabama? Like, fine, at least be scared of somebody legitimate. But Virginia, come on, catching strays here, the Wahoos.
Well, then, I think Cignetti likes to troll sometimes. Of course, he's like, well, we just got into like SEC non-conference scheduling or something. I'm sitting here thinking, wait a minute.
Don't look at Michigan's schedule and Ohio State's schedule and Penn State's schedule the last 3 years. Don't do it. Don't do it.
For every SEC team that plays somebody in November, we can find somebody in September that's playing a hard game. We can find non-conference scheduling in the SEC that's great. We can find a non-conference schedule in the SEC that's not great. So, not only that, by the way, I'm not picking on Adam Rittenberg from ESPN for reporting this.
Oh, Adam. He took some L's on Twitter this week. I like Adam a lot, by the way.
Yeah, I do too. I'm not picking on the messenger, but there was a kind of a growing consensus out of Big Ten media days, and I know he's just reporting this, but it seems like coaches are concerned about the impact that preseason polls are having on the season. I was outside. I was trying to take care of my lawn. It was already hot and miserable. I was so mad after reading that because I could not believe how soft these coaches
Oh
are
my God, I
and
know.
how many they're just whiners. Like there's no preseason polls play no impact on the season. Then of course you get all these comments on Twitter like saying the SEC would be worse and this would help this guy. Like, just complete nonsense when it comes to they're fun for the sport. They play no role in
It's
the
like
playoff. I mean,
it's like the president of the United States complaining about a pollster just putting out data.
right.
Deep cut there.
Yeah.
No, but like it really like you can't control conversations that happen on message boards or on social media or at the bar with your buddies. Like you want to talk. Like I'm getting a lot of texts right now because I'm a Tennessee alumni and we have Tennessee 10th in our magazine. I'm getting a lot of texts from folks that are like, what's going on here, UT alumni? Why are you guys so down on Tennessee? Like that's just the fun of it. That's the
Right.
conversation. I'm like, well, maybe I'd have Auburn ahead of them. I might actually have them lower, but maybe I'd have Oklahoma behind them because of how tough the schedule. Like, like that's like what has built the sport. is
Yeah.
is the arguing about the things we cannot prove. Like that's the fun of it all. Just as a point of fact here, just a couple data points here, just a few data points here. Michigan, it's in its national championship run was, I believe, it took till November 11th before they played a ranked team. Just want to point that out. Their non-conference schedule was East Carolina, UNLV, and Bowling Green. Murderers Row there. They won 96-16. So there's that to consider. And then last year with Ohio State, they played Akron, Western Michigan, and Marshall. Did not play a ranked team until the middle of October when they lost to Oregon on the road. Very tough game. They beat Akron, Western Michigan, and Marshall 157-20. What? And Penn State this year will not play a Power 5 team in non-conference. So again, I'm not suggesting this is ultimately and it's part of what makes the Big Ten imperfect, by the way, or not the Big Ten, like the sport imperfect. The Big Ten and the SEC, both imperfect. Like every 9 games is not automatically better than 8. Some 9-game schedules are significantly more difficult. Wisconsin's schedule this year, way more difficult. But look at Oklahoma's schedule in their conference this year, or Florida in their conference this year, and those are both objectively far more difficult than almost every Big Ten 9-conference game schedule. So it's not that some aren't more difficult, some are, but some are clearly not. And that sort of case-by-case basis, like look at Indiana's schedule last year. And Tennessee's schedule last year and this year is both bad, like relatively speaking to their 8 conference games. So like there's good ones and bad ones in both formats. But the way the Big Ten lined up messaging strategy-wise and saying, well, it's not even how can we compare? This is apples to oranges. It's like, no, it's not. It's one schedule versus another schedule, the same way it's been for 35 years. And you have to try to do your best job to look at schedules that are imbalanced almost by definition, and then figure out who belongs in the tournament. And that's all it is. It's not that it's not complicated. But if you guarantee the 4th place team and this play-in stuff, like it's just not. Fans don't want this. And that's ultimately where we're at. As fans don't want this. Most media don't want this. Most college football people don't want this. And the Big Ten is dying on this hill. I hope to just get the SEC to cave on non-conference games. I hope there's no other motive, because it sounds Tony Petitti is like, he's not budging on this. And it is not popular. It is it's an unpopular bill.
I don't see how it gets any more popular, the automatic qualifiers thing either. It seems
very
like
soft. Very soft.
Seems we are stuck. That's what it's as a sport. We are stuck on the postseason, which means we stay at 12, which isn't necessarily the worst thing.
If only the playoff had sort of included maybe more teams than it did like 5 or 10 years ago, and then in the process of sort of including a few more teams, we could have a few 10-2 teams where we're not really sure which one played the tougher schedule or not. We could have them play each other. And then in a playoff game, maybe we could figure out which one is better on the field. And then that team would advance into another round of the tournament. And then the team that loses that game their season probably would be over. Just an idea.
Just
I don't know.
the other thought here is college football is so imperfect, but that's also what makes it perfect. It's like things like this that we're talking about. Like there's no perfect like postseason. There's no perfect schedule. There's no perfect this or that. Like I'm fine with tweaking and I'm fine with making the sport better and all that. But there is a point to where it's like, I mean, we're sitting there talking like schedules. Like even if you have the SEC playing 9, the Big Ten playing 9, the ACC, you're still going to end up with these schedules that are unbalanced. But also that's sort of like the beauty of this. Like the fact that Indiana had that schedule, was able to make the playoff run, SMU, all these, like that's great for the sport. Like it's great. I love seeing like that, the new kind of blood on the scene. So it's an imperfect sport and trying to find the perfection. And we're going to be chasing this forever at this point.
And this is what was going to happen when you expanded the conferences to where they are, which is everybody's fault. It's the Big 12's fault, it's the ACC fault, Big 10, SEC. It's everybody's fault. It's TV's fault. It's boosters' fault. It's money's fault. Like you can blame everybody, and everybody's got a little guilt in this. Ain't nobody innocent. And except for that's what makes the sport sort of perfect still to some degree. It's still my favorite sport on Saturdays. The regular season is still imperfect. And you know what is perfect? Athlon Sports preseason magazines. There you go. Check that out if you're watching on YouTube. I got mine finally, Stephen. Look at that. Look at that.
I'm glad we finally got you a magazine. It is also still...
It's a Pac-12 magazine.
It is. That is. Yes, that is. Oregon, Washington, and USC on the cover. Sources have told me that it is still out on newsstands nationwide. You can also order it at athlonsports.com too. So
it's a beautiful book. It's a beautiful book.
NFL and fantasy also on newsstands too.
Yeah, let's get it. Okay, random observation here. I don't know why I just thought of this. My wife and I, so a friend of mine who covers the Titans was on Survivor. And just bear with me here. This is everything in my life comes back to college football. Just remember that. Just remember that. So we have not watched a lot of it. I've watched there are 48 seasons. I've maybe watched like three of them. But my first one ever was like last year when my buddy was on there. And so I was going to, he's a part of the press corps for the Titans. And we were going to try to keep track of how we did. And a lot of the Titans players were doing like watch parties and stuff because they're huge, Survivor fans. I've never really been a fan of the show because I just never gotten into it. My wife and I are now totally into it. And we've watched now 3 seasons, like the last 3 seasons. So 45 more to go. But what happens though, is if you don't know how the game works, I don't know if you watch the show.
I have not seen an episode of it. No.
So it's all like interpersonal stuff. It's no longer about like actually trying to hunt and find food and build shelter. It used to be like that apparently in the beginning. Now it's just about like the interpersonal lying and gameplay, which is fascinating from like a human element standpoint. But the entire show reminds me of college football. The entire show. Because you get to the end and the people that were voted out, of course, pick between the 3 finalists to be who's going to win the $1 million. And it's kind of based loosely on like who you liked. It's not. It's almost like college football before we had a playoff, where it's like it's just polls deciding who wins the $1 million, and they didn't actually ever go like they just kind of like make their case in like a political way, and then they vote on it. It feels so anticlimactic, but the show's quality and value is in the weird gameplay and the lying and all the things that happen on a week in, week out basis in the regular season. And it just reminds me of college football.
Yeah, that's a good description.
I can't wait to watch Iowa State, and it may mean nothing for the national championship. But watching Iowa and Iowa State probably play to the final possession in state in a rivalry that just means so much to people that are a part of it is still such a great thing. I can't wait to watch Iowa State and Kansas State. I can't wait to watch all these teams and all these games this year because the season is here. And if the championship ends up being like Alabama, Ohio State, and it's anticlimactic, I'm like, who cares? I still enjoyed watching the season. So I've come around on that part, and just watching Survivor has like cemented this. I'm like, oh, this is kind of like college football. It's like the last episode doesn't really mean as much as you want it to.
It's almost, I would guess that a lot of people are like, give me drama. But if it ends up being Ohio State, Texas for the national championship, if it ends up being Texas, Georgia, whatever, Notre Dame, Georgia, people are fine with that. But you get the sort of twists and turns of the season
on the way,
and you get the upsets, and you get the week-to-week drama and the craziness. So yeah, I think that's a good description. Right. Survivor, college football.
I've had a lot of I've had a lot of time off, so I've got a lot of things to say. So
right.
We'll have a long episode today, but I want to make sure we give the Big Ten enough airtime here. So we'll go through here. 1 through 18. And how about we start at the bottom? And I want you to tell me who's the bottom tier. We have Purdue at 18, Maryland at 17, Northwestern at 16, UCLA at 15. Do you think those four are below everybody else? Is it just Purdue with brand new coach Barry Odom and zero returning starters on defense? Is UCLA, a team that showed some progress down the stretch last year? Is UCLA up another tier with the Michigan States and Rutgers of the world? Like how do you view the bottom tier?
I would probably put Purdue in its own tier. I like the Barry Odom hire. I also kind of wonder why he took this job. It's a tough job, and just looking at the massive rebuilding effort they're going to need, I think they're probably a clear 18. I mean, they were most of their losses weren't particularly close last year, and they were also 0-9 in Big Ten play. And we can get into some of the questions, but I think they're on their own tier at the bottom.
On their own tier. So then you have Maryland, Northwestern, and UCLA on the next tier? Or how high up do you go? When do you start including teams that are going to go to a bowl game?
I would say these next three teams are close-ish. We can, talk through some of these. Like Maryland's interesting to me because last season they had a streak going of like 3 consecutive winning seasons and going to bowl games. It was snapped last year. They weren't. I mean, they won one game in Big Ten play, and it was a comeback against USC. Like it's a weird season. But I am excited about Malik Washington, the true freshman quarterback, to see what he does. Excited to see what Preston Stone brings to Northwestern at quarterback as well. Like there was regression from the interim season under David Braun. Like, are they going to rebound after being down last year? I think UCLA might be a step ahead of these two schools, but I still think that I am curious to see how Nico fits in here. He is a massive upgrade in terms of talent at quarterback. But I look at their offensive line, look at their receivers, think there's some massive questions here. Only 3 starters back on defense. Think their schedule's pretty hard too. So I think in terms of like final projections, like where these teams are, I think UCLA, Northwestern, Maryland, pretty close in terms of record at the bottom of the Big Ten.
Yeah, and I wonder how much you believe in sort of that late season surge by UCLA. I think Deshaun Foster caught a lot of grief, rightly so, for how he sort of introed his tenure.
He was much better this year, though.
Big Ten Media Days last year. But right, like he's gotten better. The team got better. They added a star quarterback. So like now, I was actually just chatting with Femi Oladejo at Titans practice, former UCLA middle linebacker who got pushed to the edge by their superstar middle linebacker, both of whom are gone now. So they do have to rebuild some pieces on defense, especially in the back seven. I would agree that the thing that separates UCLA and Northwestern is that the quarterbacks are a little bit more established. They are transfers, of course, but Nico and Preston Stone are more established, whereas Malik Washington probably has some work to do to grow into it. Honestly, I think you could look at this in a couple of different ways with Maryland. You could say Big Ten is, for Maryland, who's had 3 straight winning seasons, to your point, to be 17th, and a coach that has had some success recruiting and winning in the Big Ten, for them to be 17th is sort of a testament to how deep the league is. At the same time, it could also be that the rest of college football is caught up with Mike Locksley, and that all the things that we've said about Mike Locksley might be turning true at this point. I don't know how you look at that. I think the quarterbacks are the way to separate it.
Yeah, I think on Maryland specifically, I think what would alarm me is that I don't know that it's a short-term regression when I look at their defense and I look at their offensive line, and you're throwing potentially a true freshman quarterback out there. And like we said, I mean, they won one game in Big Ten play last year. That was that game against USC. It was a crazy comeback. So it wasn't like that they were, 6-6 and the bottom fell out. So in this era of the portal, you can reload fast, but you're also, where are you starting from and what you're bringing in is a question. So I do think they are kind of at the bottom of the league. UCLA does interest me just because of how they finished. I mean, they started 1-5, they finished 3-2. They've upgraded at quarterback. I think Tino Sunseri is a massive upgrade over Eric Bieniemy at offensive coordinator too. So I like kind of what Deshaun Foster did in the second half, and now you've upgraded a quarterback. Is that enough to overcome some of the things? Yeah. I think the Nico experiment is going to be fascinating.
It is just a new world when you look at Maryland and Purdue and you say one combined returning starter on defense between the two teams. This is just insane. Maryland almost 40 points a game on defense, and I believe they lost 7 out of their 8 Big Ten games by more than 2 touchdowns. So the bottom did fall out for sure. Northwestern, you seem more optimistic about Northwestern than I expected, to be honest with you.
I will admit I was not necessarily a fan of the David Braun hire just because it felt very short termish. I think my optimism would be they've added some guys that transfer. You know, Griffin Wild, the transfer from South Dakota State, will help at receiver. You mentioned Preston Stone. Also, 6 starters back on defense. And I think that David Braun can get the defense kind of going back in the right direction. They do host UCLA, and they also play Purdue in conference play. So there's a chance maybe to pick up a win or two. I think that we talked about the Tulane game. I don't think they'll get to 7-5, but I could see them. They won 4 games last year. I think they could match that or maybe get to 5 this year.
Everybody else in this 14, the rest of the 14 teams could all be in the bowls. It could be in bowl games.
Mm-hmm.
I think the top 10 are actually pretty good. I think Minnesota, Wisconsin, Rutgers are all teams that have had winning records most of the time. Wisconsin's only their first losing season since 2001. Rutgers has had a couple of winning seasons in a row. I think Jonathan Smith is building it slowly but surely at Michigan State. So we'll get to those schools. And Minnesota has been extremely consistent, 8 wins, 3 of the last 4 years. So there's a lot to like about this next tier. I think those 4 are on the bottom. Now, I'm with you. Maybe Purdue's worse, but I'm just saying, generally speaking, sort of broad tiers, I think there's these 4 that are the worst 4 teams in the league, and then everybody else could be pretty good. Varying degrees of pretty good. All right, let's go to the top then. Let's start. Penn State is our number 1 pick. The big takeaway here, of course, is about retention. It is absolutely about Aller, Allen, Singleton, retaining your stars, in particular on offense. You went and paid a bunch of money to bring in Jim Knowles from Ohio State. There's not a lot to talk about from a depth chart standpoint. They are probably as talented as anybody else in America. They're as experienced as anybody in this conference. In fact, more so than most of the teams at the top from a game started standpoint. I mean, the tips are all in the middle of the table here for Penn State. And, I don't really actually care that they're not playing anybody in the non-conference. Doesn't matter to me because how you judge Penn State and James Franklin is now about the big games. And they still have to snap that thing this year for it to be legitimate and for them to play in the national championship game, which I think they are capable of doing.
I agree. I think everything is there for Penn State to win the Big Ten, to go far in the playoff, and potentially play for the national championship. If they get beat early in the playoff, I think it'd be a massive, massive disappointment, absent some injuries. You mentioned for all the reasons you mentioned, they have now upgraded at the 2 coordinator spots the last 2 off seasons. Their biggest weakness was receiver. They have brought in 3 transfers that should make a difference right away. You can go down the positions. One of the best offensive lines, I think the best running back tandem in college football. And, I know there are some questions maybe about depth here and there on defense. I think Jim Knowles is going to get this thing figured out. Of course, the game's at Ohio State this year. They host Oregon. They also have to play at Iowa. So they have some tricky games. But I think, we saw this last year with Ohio State. You can lose a game or 2 in the regular season and figure it out by the playoffs. So whatever happens in the regular season is one thing, the playoff is another. But I think the expectation and the goal for Penn State should certainly be playing deep into January. There is everything about this team says they should go far this year. And you mentioned roster retention. That has been one thing that we saw with Michigan and we saw it with Ohio State the last 2 years, keeping that roster together, translated into success. Yeah. I think Penn State has been one of the biggest winners of the offseason. And I think the expectation, like I said, should be playing for the national championship.
Really, I mean, you mentioned the transfers, Pena, Ross, and Hudson at wide receiver. I think what's interesting is going to be what does Koltanecki do with an experienced backfield and quarterback? Can he do more creative things if they've got a little bit more talent on the outside, more experience at quarterback, and the best offensive line / running back tandem in the country? You got to be able to be creative. You should be able to get real interesting because they were super creative with Warren last year, but he's gone. So it'll be interesting to see. The defense, of course, it's Penn State defense. They got a star at every level. They've replaced a lot of guys. I will say shout out to Kevin Winston. He didn't play much for this team last year, but he was a captain. He's now on the Titans again. I got to see he's had a great couple of weeks of practice. So there's the fact that they lost Abdul Carter and Winston and a bunch of other pieces off the defense, and they're still among the best defenses in the country tells you how talented that team was last year. That's for sure. So I think it's Penn. I know we waffled about this to some degree. And I know Ohio State and Oregon and Michigan and even Illinois might have something to say about this conference championship game down the road, but I think it's clear that Penn State belongs at the top.
It's a debate for me. I think that, we mentioned Penn State could be firing on all cylinders by December, January, maybe like you said, like how long does it take Colton Ecke to figure out how to blend all these receivers in? But I think the same thing is true like with Ohio State. Like they got a lot of pieces that are gone, but I think recycling the roster and reloading, I think by November, December, they're going to be dangerous. And of course, there's that game on November 1st in Columbus, which I'm sure there will be zero takes after if it's regardless of what happens here.
Ohio State's number 2, top 5 nationally. Where are they better? I mean, Jeremiah Smith and Tate and Ennis are really good at receiver. Caleb Downs might be the best safety in America. Josh Simmons apparently seems to be doing amazingly already in camp for the Chiefs, apparently. They've replaced, where are they? Only 3 returning starters on defense. They're not better at coordinator. Hartline's calling plays. They're not better at quarterback. They're not better at running back. They're not better at offensive line. Like, where are they better this year at the start of this? I'm not saying they're not going to be great at the end of the year, but where are they better today? And it's hard to find a place on the team.
I think you could make a case that the offensive line having some continuity. They're not losing, like you said, Simmons. They don't lose Seth. They lost Seth McLaughlin during the season. Like maybe having a 5 that starts from start to finish, like that offensive line, the upside there, maybe. I think Max Clare, a tight end, is a pretty good pickup too. So I think they've got, like Ohio State really needed another weapon in the passing game. Their receiving core is the best in college football. But to your point, I think this is the debate on Ohio State for me. It's like they're not lacking talent. I think the question is how fast do they go from recycling the roster and losing a lot to being back at the top of the Big Ten. I have no doubt they will be there. I think the question is what's the upside here?
Right, because if they're 10-2 with all those NFL players, it seems like asking them to replicate that would be difficult. I think the same you could say about Georgia. I think Georgia. I'm not sure Georgia is better at any one position than they were last year. I don't know if I put Oregon in the same boat, which is the next team we're going to talk about at number 3. I don't know if Oregon's better at any one position. And I kind of put all 3 of those teams into the same bucket of elite teams last year. Probably 3 of the top 4 teams in the country, and all of them are replacing a ton of dudes with lots of talent and trustworthy coaches. But if you want to look at Oregon, I can say the same thing. Like they've got a couple of nice pieces in the front 7. I love Dante Moore at quarterback, but where are they better? Because they lost a ton to the draft as well.
That is a good question. I have more questions about Oregon than Ohio State or Penn State. Now, you could look at the recruiting and go, yeah, there's some talent in the freshman and sophomore ranks. They also lost Evan Stewart earlier this offseason. Could be for the year with the knee injury. So they already lost Tez Johnson, Trayshawn Holden, 2 of their top receivers. Now, the guy who's supposed to be the number 1 target is out indefinitely. So they've already had a kind of an offseason setback there. I think Dante Moore's development is going to be fascinating here because, he was up and down at UCLA. He was a true freshman, not best supporting cast. This Oregon offense, once you get going on it, you can go. So I think his development is key, but also I think the offensive line is interesting here. I mean, they went out and got Isaiah World from Nevada, Alex Harkey from Texas State, Emmanuel Pregnon from USC, 3 transfers who are going to start from day one. They had trouble last year at the start of the season, but by the end of the year, their offensive line was good. So, just looking at their schedule, they play Penn State, they get Indiana, they get Iowa, and they got to play USC and Washington. So they have some tough games here. But I think by November, they're going to be a much more dangerous team. But I think in terms of upside, I'm not sure I would put their upside this year in the same category as Ohio State or Penn State. They feel like a very solid 10-2 type team pending Dante Moore's development.
Yeah, I mean, Lanning and Day have done a brilliant job managing the roster year in and year out with the new rules and everything. They've done a great job. I totally agree that Ohio State belongs ahead of Oregon because there are some elite star power pieces for Ohio State that they still have. Oregon is doing a lot of the same things. I mean, 4 offensive linemen are gone. The whole secondary is basically gone. They got to replace all their skill players. Now the Hughes transfer from Tulane is really good, so they should be good at running the football, and I agree with you on Moore. So I just think there's somebody that, and I do this with you all the time, this is maybe more of our playoff prediction pod, But there's one of these teams that we just assume is going to rebuild and reload and be great, and they're not. And I don't now. That could be like 9-3, 8-4.
Yeah.
But like whether it's Georgia, Notre Dame, Oregon, or Ohio State, like those four were all like very late in the standings last year in the tournament, and all of them replaced everybody, including their quarterbacks and a bunch of coordinators and a bunch of talent and NFL picks. And so I don't know. Somebody's not going to be as good. My feeling on it is Oregon could be the one, but a step back for Dan Lanning's new Oregon team could still be good enough to make the playoff. They still could be 10-2, finish third in the conference where we have them, and still make the playoff.
Would it stun you, though, if they lost to Penn State, they lost at Iowa, which Iowa in November we know is a very tricky place to play for some top-ranked Big Ten teams, and then they lose to Washington? That's 9-3.
That's what I'm saying.
Yeah, I wouldn't be stunned either.
I would not be surprised at all if they miss the playoffs with a 9-3 record.
But also could set something up pretty special for 2026.
Bingo. Bingo. Absolutely. No question about it. Number 4 is Michigan. Obviously, almost all this is hard to do because almost all of this hinges on how quickly Bryce Underwood develops. They're going to be good in the back. Like, they're going to be good where you think Michigan's always good. They're going to be good at running the football. They're going to be good in the backfield. They're going to be pretty good in the trenches despite losing a bunch of talented pieces off that defense. Like Stewart was a draft pick, Graham was a draft pick, Johnson was a draft pick. Like, they got a lot of people off that team. Grant, the linebackers are still pretty good. New offensive coordinator is going to be, or Lindsey's going to be managing the offense. His number one priority is Underwood. The schedule's not all that difficult, relatively speaking. I think this is a really good Michigan team. I just think the timing is off for them to be great. That's how I feel about it.
Trying to think the best way to word this, but almost if you told me Michigan made the playoff instead of Oregon, I wouldn't be totally stunned by that.
I agree with you.
Because their schedule, they do not play Penn State, they do not play Oregon, they don't play Indiana, they don't play Illinois. That's like 4 of the top teams in the conference. I think what Michigan has is, and I think you go back to the end of last year, like they had that strong foundation. They finished well. They got the Bryce Underwood commitment. I think the offensive line's going in the right direction. They're going to be good on defense. Like, the foundation for this team seems really strong. So really it just comes down to how fast does Bryce Underwood go from 5-star recruit to very solid college quarterback, and also playmakers at receiver. That is one kind of under the radar concern, I still think for Michigan, is like their receivers and being able to consistently win to give Underwood some options. So I like this team a lot, actually. I would probably pick them like 9-3 to just miss the playoff. They've got to play at Oklahoma, at USC, at Nebraska, and they host Ohio State. So they have some tricky games here, but I think good defense. They'll run the ball. If Underwood hits right away, I could see this team making the playoff.
I wouldn't be surprised if Illinois finished like 3rd and they were ahead of Oregon and Michigan. I wouldn't be surprised, but because Illinois is doing something totally different than everybody else, so we can get to that. I'm with you. So I'm trying to come up with the right word because there's a vibe around Michigan that I'm trying to figure out, which is it's not transitionary because that was mostly last year, and it's not chaos because that's a little bit of last year as well. But it feels like there's like this leftover residue of like instability, if that makes sense, because of the more stuff, and it's still this ongoing NCAA garbage, which, I'm so tired of talking about. And when you plug a freshman into that situation, generally there's going to be some growing pains. And so I feel like there's just this unknown element of instability, maybe, because I'm with you. I like the defense looks awesome. They got 3 starters back on the O-line. They're going to run the ball like crazy. I think the coaching staff is solid. The schedule sets up. Like, it's all there for Michigan to be pretty damn good. There's just something like there's something there that's still like distracting them or something. I don't know I don't know how to phrase it, if that makes sense.
No, it makes sense because, but Sharon Moore is going to miss 2 games at least. Like, what happens if they drop a hammer? I don't think the NCAA will, but what happens if
I'm not sure if they own a hammer.
Yeah, that's true. Drop a pencil on them, I guess, or something. I don't know, a piece of paper.
A heavy stack of legal arguments.
Right. Yeah, a bunch of folders just
right. Here's some legal paths. See if you can run your way through that.
I think, speaking of legal, I love the law and order backfield of Jordan Marshall and Justice Haynes, and if they get the offensive line clicking. But I do think there is like that distraction element. Like, what does the NCAA stuff?
Yeah.
Like if it hangs around, if it's a distraction, like maybe that hurts Michigan this year too.
And maybe it galvanizes them. Who knows? You have Indiana at 5, Illinois at 6. Explain yourself, because I think Illinois is the better team.
Well, we'll get to Illinois here in a second. I think for Indiana, this is a trust in Kirk Cignetti, and also they have done enough through the portal. Their schedule is more difficult than last year at Iowa, at Oregon, at Penn State. They also host Illinois, and it could be a very important game for positioning in the conference. Each level of their defense has got an All-American, whether it's Kamara up front, Fisher at linebacker, Pons at the cornerback position. They got some studs on that side of the ball. I really like Fernando Mendoza in this offense, though. I think it's kind of flown under the radar. Watching him at Cal, watching how he could fit in here. Great receivers. I'm not saying that they're going to match last year, but I think Indiana has plenty of staying power. What gives me a little bit of concern about Illinois, and Braden, I'm a stat nerd. You look at their yards per play margin last season in like Big Ten games, it was 5.8 on offense per play, 5.7 on defense per play. Their scoring margin, 249 to 239. So basically 10 points. I think they could just be better this year, but I do think this team is definitely on the margins. And I think back to how they won some of those games last year. There was a crazy finish against Rutgers. Kansas kind of, had some issues with some turnover in that game. I like this Illinois team. They did win 5 games by 1 score with Altmaier coming back. Good offensive line. It's a Bielema type team with the way they'll run the ball. But I do think there are some questions here. Like, what exactly is the upside? I think their defensive line could be a question mark this year. They're also losing their 2 best receivers. So they got a lot back, but I still think there are some questions. That being said, I think Indiana and Illinois kind of neck and neck here for that next tier right after Michigan.
So you trust the guy who's coached in the Big Ten one season, more than the guy who's coached in the league 11 seasons and has 9 winning records and 6 double-digit win seasons in the conference. You trust the guy who's done it 1 year, one time. He's more trustworthy than Brett Bielema.
Yeah, I Googled him. So
here's the other thing. Indiana has to play both Penn State and Oregon.
Mm-hmm.
Illinois does not play Penn State, Oregon, or Michigan, for that matter. Now, they will play each other early in the year, and that could be the deciding factor in this argument, and that game's it in Indiana. I just think the Illinois doing things the other way, the old school way, returning 16 starters, a quarterback who's been there. They're sort of just like recruiting and developing like a regular good old college football team. I like that they're trying to portal everything again in Indiana, and I think Cignetti can do it. I think this Illinois team is vastly underrated in general. I think they're more like 14-15 in the country, and I think Indiana's more like 23-24. That's kind of where I'm at with these two. I would flip those two, but I'm not going to argue with you on the Athlon rankings on this. Too much.
I spent so much time trying to decide Illinois or Indiana higher. It's probably not healthy to admit that. So to your point, I think they're very close. I would not be surprised. It was a play that I think Cignetti reloaded enough, and also the game is at Indiana. Yeah. So I think these are probably like 9-3 type teams, and that game probably decides it.
And again, it might be just, do you believe Altmaier can take another step and actually become a difference maker? Or, is Mendoza actually better than Altmaier? It's possible. I don't know. On paper right now, he's probably not, but like he could be by the end of the year. And I trust both the coaches. I was kidding a little tongue in cheek because it seems like an odd piece of analysis to be like, I just trust Kirk Cignetti when the other guys coached very well for 11 seasons.
Fair point.
So, but I think Illinois has a slight nod in experience and a slight nod in schedule. I lean Illinois here, but I think they're both teams that can compete for a playoff spot.
Yeah, I should say, like, me picking Indiana is not anything against Illinois. Like, I think they're both going to be top 15-ish type teams. It's just that game early in the season was kind of the deciding factor for me.
Can't believe you hate Illinois like that. So in the magazine, we have Iowa 7, Nebraska 8, USC 9. We have adjusted those rankings. USC is now number 7. Lincoln Riley 15-11 his last 2 seasons. A lot to be desired. A lot of one-score losses last year. It seems like they've got Maavia. Why can I not say his name?
Maavia. Yeah, it is a
Maavia
little
at
tricky.
quarterback. They got a couple of good receivers. Offensive line is still a major problem. How much more progress can the defense make? They did make some progress last year in Dan Tunlin's first year as a coordinator. They went from 34 to 24 points a game, so that's clear progress. The front seven, they could be better along the line of scrimmage on defense. That we've just been saying the same exact thing we've been saying about USC every offseason for the last 3 years. Like, oh, well, they've upgraded talent on their defense and the coordinator, and it should be better. And last year they were marginally better, but it did not result in anything. So why have you moved USC up 2 spots ahead of Iowa and Nebraska?
I think all those teams are pretty close. They're top 20 to 30 type teams. Maybe I'm overthinking this. Maybe I've had too much time this offseason to think about all these teams. I'm buying a little bit of USC. So they played 9 games last year, decided by one score, 4-5. I think there could be some positive or there could be some negative regression there. But they were right on the edge last year of a little bit better record. Now that doesn't necessarily mean anything for 2025, but I think what helps USC is second year of Danton Lynn, defensive coordinator, a little bit of progress coming on defense this season. Also, Maavia at quarterback. He's now the starter for the full offseason. They've got 2 great receivers in Mekhi Lemon and Jacoby Lane. Would like to see the offensive line kind of solidify. They're actually waiting on some another player who's trying to get another year of eligibility. So there are some questions here. I'm kind of just banking on, I think Lincoln Riley's a better coach than, 7-6. Some close games last year. They bounced in their way.
I think he is too.
So a couple close games bounced their way this season.
Okay.
They don't play Ohio State. They don't play Penn State. They get Oregon and Illinois and Michigan at home. So, they get Illinois on the road. But the schedule's not. I think there's enough there. I think they could bounce back in the top 25.
We've got Iowa at 8, Nebraska 9, Washington 10. I think with USC, these 4 is a very healthy group of teams, and I think one of them will absolutely be a team that jumps into contention. I think there's reasons to pick Nebraska with Raiola's development. There's reasons to like Washington with how good the team was last year in a year of total transition and total having to replace everything. And then Iowa, of course, is sort of like a model of consistency, and you know what you're going to get from them on offense, running the football, and on defense, but you actually have now potentially a quarterback who can make things go and a coordinator who got results last year in Tim Lester, almost 30 points a game in Iowa City. So I really like this group of 4 teams here. We've got Iowa 8, Nebraska 9, Washington 10. Why don't you sort of explain how you prioritize them?
It's tough. So I think there's a trust factor with Iowa. On one hand, they are losing 2 of their best defenders, Jay Higgins, Nick Jackson at linebacker. Also, just some kind of scattered losses up front and in the secondary. But I do think, even with a difficult schedule, I sort of just trust Kirk Ferentz and Phil Parker to reload on defense. And if you're telling me Iowa's got an answer at quarterback, and I think they do with Mark Gronowski, their offensive line is going to be one of the best in the country. They'll find a running back to replace Caleb Johnson. I think they're dangerous because their defense will be good and their offense will be even better than last year. I don't love their schedule though. At Iowa State, they get Indiana, at Wisconsin, Penn State, Oregon, at USC, and at Nebraska. That's pretty tough. So I think from a schedule perspective, that's probably one of the least favorable paths for Iowa. I think if you're looking for a sleeper, and I know some people probably go, oh, here we go again. I think it is Nebraska. I do like their schedule. I like the development of Raiola at quarterback under Dana Holgerson. They've tried to improve the offensive line and the receiving core through the portal this offseason. So you've upgraded OC, better receivers, improving offensive line. They got some losses on defense. I think we kind of trust Matt Rule and the staff to figure that out. Michigan, USC, and Iowa all come to Lincoln this year. That's a recipe to get to like a 9-3 type season for Nebraska. And maybe they start winning some of those close games that they've had trouble navigating in recent years. I think for Washington, it feels like to me the jump for Washington to get into that top 6 or so might be a little bit more steep. They bring back 4 returning starters. I have some questions about their offensive line. this might just be a debate of how high can Damon Williams carry the team. We've talked about him all off season. I think he is one of the breakout quarterbacks of this season. So I think he is going to hit. I think Washington will be better this year after a 6-7 season. 10th in the Big Ten is still like a top, 35-ish type team this year.
I also really like the Ryan Walters hire.
Yes, I do too.
Like when he doesn't have to do all the other big roster stuff, the CEO stuff, he's been a very good coordinator. So I think he could do some work on the defense there. And so if you've got Williams and Walters sort of leading the two sides of things, I'm sort of bullish on this Washington team. I'm with you. There are questions, returning starters, experience. There's a problem there, but like they overachieved last year, and that was without Will. That was with Williams. Sort of just he had like 2 starts and a couple of appearances. So Nebraska is fascinating because it's sort of just like A&M. It's like one day they'll do it, and maybe that'll be the summer we all say that they'll do it, but like maybe not. Most of the time they won't. Iowa, it's fascinating for me because I think they do have the right quarterback and the right pieces in place. I'm curious if they have the weapons outside to make the passing attack go. I think that's the area of concern for me is do they have enough dynamic athletic ability in space? I know, crazy to say that about Iowa. So I don't know. I think USC is the safest bet, which is why you've got them ranked at 7. I think Nebraska is they are really tempting to be the breakout team because I trust Rule. I trust Raiola. I kind of trust what they're doing. It's a little bit more of a traditional build to some degree. You got Holgo there calling plays. If you can keep him out of the riverboats. So I kind of like the Nebraska team, Washington and Nebraska, but like I like USC and Iowa as well. I really like this group of 4. I do.
I do too. Also, there's like a historical thing here for Nebraska because if you look at Matt Rule's 3rd year at Temple and Baylor, those teams took off. Like Baylor wasn't very good year one, 6 wins, and they played for the Big 12 championship that 3rd year. Temple was much better too. One thing on Washington, you want to talk about playing spoiler? Oregon, Ohio State, and Illinois all come to Seattle.
They're going to get one. They're going to get.
As I say, they're going to get somebody this year because I think that the team will be better in Jed Fish's 2nd year. His team at Arizona year 2 got better, and you throw in Williams with that home field advantage.
They will knock Oregon out of the playoff. I am now convinced of it in this conversation.
It's a bold prediction. I like it.
Oregon will be 9-2. Washington will be like 7-4. And they're going to go to 8-4, and they're going to knock Oregon out of the playoff in one of the best rivalries in all of college football that nobody talks about.
Agreed. I like the rivalry angle there.
Okay. And you said it's in Seattle at the end of the year.
Mm-hmm.
So, all right, Minnesota at 11. Drake Lindsey, now your quarterback. You got new offensive line. You got Darius Taylor back at running back. 5 returning starters on defense. New defensive line. You kind of have a star, right? Potentially at safety and at defensive end. You got some nice pieces there. Model of consistency. I'm tempted to put Minnesota into that group we just talked about because they consistently overachieve their talent level and are consistently competing for 8 or 9 wins every year.
I think for Minnesota to do that this year, it starts at quarterback. So Drake Lindsey, kind of a complete unknown, but the bones of this Minnesota offense is still going to be try to reload on the offensive line, run Darius Taylor 300 carries, whatever they need to do. So run the ball, play good defense, and I'm sure they'll be in a handful of close games. And you mentioned the stat at the beginning, 8 wins in 3 out of the last 4 years. This is a very solid program. Also, Coy Parrish, the safety, underrated nationally. If you watched Minnesota last year, you knew how good he was as a freshman. He'll be even better this year. I think we'll get into these next few teams, but I think there's actually an argument for Minnesota on the schedule front too, because Wisconsin's schedule is brutal. Minnesota, of course, they do play Ohio State and they play Oregon, but they get Nebraska, they get Wisconsin, Michigan State, and Rutgers at home. So some of your swing games come in Minneapolis. Even if you do play Ohio State and Oregon, they're on the road. You probably would lose to them anyways.
I just trust this Minnesota team more than I trust Luke Fickell in Wisconsin, which is crazy to say. Wisconsin, one of the most trustworthy programs in all of college football, and frankly, Fickell, consistently one of the best coaches in the country. It has not translated yet in Madison. And the problem is, Stephen, when you look at this roster and then combine it with the schedule, there's not a lot of like glaring reasons for excitement. And it's not that they're not going to be good or solid or make a bowl, but first losing season since 2001, which is crazy to think about. Jeff Grimes is a fine hire. I don't think it's a revolutionary hire. It's fine. You go get Billy Edwards in the transfer portal. Fine. Nothing revolutionary. Like, they didn't stop the run. They have to rebuild the entire secondary. I think they'll get back to a little bit of their identity running the football on offense. And I do like some of their receivers, but like I like the O-line and the receivers, I guess. But there's not a lot on paper to love about the roster taking a big step forward. And then you look at their schedule and you're like, oh my God.
Right. I mean, the schedule, I think they play one out of the only one they don't play out of the projected top 7 is Penn State, and they play Alabama in non-conference play. I mean, this might be why I think Luke Fickell got a contract extension, a couple way back in the offseason, was probably because, I mean, the pressure is certainly increasing here. But I think to your point, if I wanted to be optimistic about Wisconsin, it would be they're kind of getting back to the basics here, getting back to Wisconsin football, run it, get the, even with the turnover at running back. I like their offensive line. They're getting back to just what they do well here. I don't think Billy Edwards is necessarily like the all Big Ten quarterback, but he could be solid for what they want to do. And Jeff Grimes has been pretty successful. Defensively, I do have some questions about how their front holds up, especially when they struggled against the run last year, relying on a lot of transfers this year. This feels like they might get to like a 5-7. But if we're talking about how Luke Fickell turned a corner, it would be that the schedule was just really hard, but they showed some progress. They got the identity back on track. And then next year, maybe they can take a step forward. The schedule is just really hard. It feels like the upside's kind of limited here to maybe just getting to a bowl.
I think if they get to a bowl, it's a good season. I would call that progress. Like, seriously, 6 wins, I think is progress. I think you could argue Rutgers at 13 and Michigan State at 14. There are more reasons for optimism with those teams. Rutgers back-to-back winning seasons. You got Calic Manis back at quarterback. Schiano has a lot of proven track record at taking a bunch of pieces you've never heard of and making them good at football. So and then Michigan State we could talk about. I think it's a little bit more of a slow build with Jonathan Smith, which I know you agree with. But you've got the quarterback in place. You got a star receiver. You got a bunch of experience on defense coming back. They all need some breaks here in this area of the conference to kind of jump up. But I wouldn't be surprised if Wisconsin's down at like 14 or 15 because of the schedule more than anything else.
I could see that. I think on Rutgers, so they won 7 games last year. I would not be surprised if they might end up at the end of the year being a better team, but it may not show up in the win column. To your point, Calic Manis is back at quarterback. They lose Monganai at running back. I think between the returning production they have on the offensive line and the running backs, they're probably going to be fine there. Typically we think about Schiano in defense. Well, they've only got 2 returning starters this year, and there's a lot of turnover up front and in the secondary. So the offense may actually have to carry the day for Rutgers, but they've had back-to-back winning seasons, and they're kind of on stable footing again under Schiano. Their schedule is maybe not as hard as Wisconsin, but you're talking about playing 2 of the MAC's best teams, Ohio and Miami of Ohio in non-conference play, hosting Iowa, Oregon. They also play at Ohio State. They also host Penn State. That's a pretty hard schedule. Feels like
you can lose 5 games and still have a good season and be better than Wisconsin if you lose 5 times. They're going to beat MAC teams. They're going to beat the MAC.
At Minnesota, at Washington, at Illinois. I mean, their only game they may be well, they take that back. They play Maryland at home and they get Purdue on the road. I think they'll be favored in those 2 games. I don't know they'll be favored in another Big Ten contest.
All right, fair enough. All right, talk to me about Michigan State. Why do you think it's another year before we see a little break for them?
I think they are on the right track. Now, I think everything in the portal era is all about win now, sacrifice, just go into the portal, bring guys in to turn your team around. But we saw Jonathan Smith at Michigan State. They went 7-17 in his first 2 years. And then that third year, they saw the program start to kind of go back and trend up. I think that's where this program is headed to. I think it may not be a 7-5 type season. They may just get to 6-6, but we know he likes to slow build. Aiden Childs, I think, taking a step forward this year too. There's some questions about, line of scrimmage, offensive line. Can they run the ball better? It just feels like they need one more year to take a step forward. And then maybe in 2026, we're talking about this team closer to like the top 10 in the Big Ten.
And then you got UCLA, Northwestern Maryland, Purdue to round out 15 through 18. It's really hard to do preview pods with 18 teams, Stephen.
Yeah.
Especially when you have all the other stuff that's going on in college football. So I know this was a little bit long for everybody today, but big league, big conference, important teams. I think there are 6 playoff contenders, and if you want to be super liberal, there might be a 7th if you just kind of pick of the USC, Iowa, Nebraska, Washington, even Minnesota maybe. There's one other team that could get to that 9-win range, and if you're starting to play with 9 wins on your schedule projection-wise, you're getting close to playoff contention. So I think this is the key here, and I think we said this back when we did a quick little like preview pod about the Big Ten like months ago. We talked about quarterbacks. This is all about the potential at the quarterback position. There are so many really talented players with lots of upside. Some of them are going to hit, and some of them are not. And the question is, who is that, and how, and when does it happen? Is it Dante Moore? Is it Julian Sayin? Is it Bryce Underwood? Is it Damon Williams? It could be any number of these. Is it Raiola? It could be any number of these guys. Mendoza and Altmaier, already solid players. So like somebody is going to become a star. And if there are 2 or 3 of those guys, those are the teams that I think have room to get into the playoff. So I just don't know who they are. I don't think Underwood's going to be. I don't think it's going to be fast enough. I think that's too much pressure for a true freshman, to be honest. I think Nebraska is right there with sneaky, and I think the dependability of Altmaier at Illinois I like. It's a fascinating middle of the pack in the league. None of them deserve an automatic bid.
Yes, that is 100% true. I actually like I would probably draw the line at 7 teams as contenders. I think you do our top 6, and then you just insert one of USC, Nebraska, Iowa, somebody in there. I think will emerge as a contender.
Yeah, I think that's about right. All right, if you're listening on a podcast app of choice, please rate, review, subscribe, 5 stars only. If you do not give us 5 stars, you are a
hater.
We got to work on that. We got to work on that.
I'll go work in the mirror tonight again.
Give me like some personality, like hater. Like give me some personality. You're like, I just need you to practice a little bit. Run some lines. Run some lines with like the 1-year-old and get back to me.
There was a proud parent moment the other day.
Oh,
that I was in the
found
office.
Your Dan Lefevre jersey.
Still looking for. She grabbed the Ole Miss 2024 spring prospectus off the shelf. And it was like a proud moment. It was the first thing she went into the office and grabbed. So,
Stephen Lassen,
I had to let her.
The Lassen household single-handedly destroying forests with media guides and spring prospectuses still in a stack somewhere.
It comes in the mail, and I read it, and I hold it until the end of the year.
We used to get those at the Athlon office. Remember, we'd have like 100 new spring prospectuses or media guides show up. These media guides would be like 180 pages thick of like, here's what happened in 1971.
Yeah. But
you're like, guys, we have the internet. We can go look this stuff up now.
Sometimes it's nice to have the hard copy, but my favorite thing was when the coach would get fired, we would cut the coach out and put him on the wall. You remember this?
Oh, what year was that? Like 2010 or 11 or something?
Something like that, yeah.
We'd go to the media guide and we'd cut out the picture.
There's the UTEP coach always had the axe in his hand, so he was kind of like so
funny.
So good little humor for college football there.
Oh, it was good. Back in the dude, those were the days, man. The newsroom at Athlon, those were great. Those were great days. All right. Thank you guys all for listening. Watch the YouTube page. Please subscribe to that. Give us a thumbs up. Share it with somebody. Tell somebody that you're enjoying watching Stephen Lassen talk about college football and that you tolerate me. I do appreciate that. Automatic qualifying bids are for the birds, y'all. Well, come on with that. Get out of here with that garbage. For Stephen, I'm Braden. Thanks for listening. We'll talk to you next time.